Hey there. Hey, I'm glad to see you guys on. I don't see you guys on, but I mean, I see you're there.
Oh,
There's darkness there. I don't know if, there you are.
here I am.
There
Hi,
you are.
Rabbi.
So how are things going there? I know it's very hard. I'm glad you guys are there.
Yeah,
A lot of people don't have power.
thank you. Yes, it's been actually very dicey here. We were without power a little bit Monday morning, and we've been quite fortunate to have power ever since about 1 p.m. on Monday. But we were without flowing water starting in the middle of the night, Sunday night, and it just started flowing again late this afternoon. And we're still waiting for one bathroom to open up. The rest of the house
Oh, wow. Good.
has
Because
water.
I know some people who don't have water at all in their place right now.
Yes, we do too.
Glad you guys are back.
Yeah, thanks, Joyce.
Thank you.
That is crazy. So what, I mean, are just is a lot of stuff shut down there still?
Yes, yes.
Five Walmart stores.
What? What was that?
We can't hear you, David. Get closer to the mic.
Can't hear you.
Yeah, 500 Walmart stores in Texas and I guess another nearby state. They've closed them. The grocery store that we use that's right by the house, they've had to close because they have no running water. All these medical offices, doctors that we go to, I've been getting emails saying that the offices are closed day after day after day. They're saying we're closed today, we're closed, and it comes the next day, we're closed, next day, we're closed.
Are
It
people
is
just not leaving the house? I mean, that's the deal. They're just like locked in their homes.
Well, pretty much. Yeah, I would say we tried to make a reservation. I made a reservation at a hotel once we had no water, and we drove out there. It was hard to find because it was dark when we were there, and it turned out that they had no electricity at all.
Oh
And
my.
so we at least had electricity. So we turned around and came home and we said, we're just going to stay there for the duration. So we have seen throughout the years some frigid temperatures, and we've seen it's not unusual for us to have maybe 1 or 2 ice storms a year. But to have weather this low, this frigid, this long, we have never seen. And to have the snow that we have right now is it is unprecedented. It looks like Michigan.
Oh boy. And you know what Michigan looks like.
Yeah.
It seems to me like every year you've been in Texas, the temperature has dropped and dropped and dropped, and the snow has increased every year.
Tell about the person with the vortex theory.
David, you're not close to the phone, to the microphone. Move in, David. Move in.
Well, I read an article today that that the vortex and the fact that all this Arctic air is coming this far down, and the theory is it all has to do with climate change and global warming. So,
global warming. I'm sure you
I don't
believe
know.
that.
I don't know.
No. I mean, listen.
Send some of that global warming my way, would you?
Listen, you're gonna have we have to have an ability to get power back onto people, though. This is ridiculous. I don't care. This isn't a political issue. This is just plain bad mismanagement.
Oh yeah.
When people can't get basic services like water, and I mean, this is affecting people who are sick. I mean, there's going to be people who will die because of this.
Oh, yeah, I've already seen news stories about some people that have.
Wow.
Serious problems.
Listen, I hope everything in Texas gets fixed real soon for everybody there and for everybody, for our whole country. I mean, needless to say, half of California lives there now, so we have a lot of friends there, and we have a lot of people that we're thinking about there, like you guys. That this, like, it doesn't even sound like they have a plant. Like some of these places, they're not even telling people when they're going to get water. They're not even
Yes,
telling them when they're going to get water.
I know. We really truly have been fortunate through this. So that's all I can say. A lot of gratitude, thanking my lucky stars. Just
Is that
hoping we come.
is that your area, or is that you just happen to be lucky? Does your area have better services, or is it just your house in that area that's
Yes,
better?
we live fairly close to a hospital, and I am thinking that that's the reason why our electricity has stayed on, because they are doing these rolling blackouts. We were fortunate enough to have some friends invite us over to their house to take a shower yesterday. So we did that.
So
we,
you're
No, I mean,
clean.
it's serious. It's gonna be 4 days that people don't have showers there. It's
Well,
not.
yes, and as it turns out, at their house, they've got a Generac, and so while we were there, the power went out 2 times, and then their Generac took over, and so we had power in the house.
Oh, so maybe
But
we should consider Generac.
so yeah, I have for a long time. And I've been trying to talk David into it for a couple years now. I may be getting close.
Well, tell
Thank
me
you.
when you make up your mind, and then I'll follow.
Oh, there you go.
But
Thanks
you
for
guys
asking,
keep
Rabbi.
away. You
All right, well,
guide
guys,
me and everything.
keep us updated. We're definitely praying for you. There's not much more we can do than that, but I do hope you guys get back to normal soon, and I don't know. I mean, hopefully people will learn from this, and I don't know.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't know what the solution is, but I mean, Houston's one of the biggest cities in our country, in the country, right? It's one of the largest. It's one of the largest metropolitan areas.
Fourth largest.
And
Yeah.
you guys are just north of Dallas, which
Yeah.
is how big? Bigger even than Houston, isn't it?
No,
Oh,
no.
really?
Houston is
Houston's bigger.
Houston's one of the biggest in the country,
Yeah.
and then Dallas is in the top 20 or 15 or something. But I mean,
Top
definitely
10.
top 10.
Dallas is in the top 10. Houston is number 4.
So these are major cities, folks. I mean, anyways, so we I don't know, we have our problems here too, but let's hope we don't have them. We were emailing back and forth with Daniel Levine, one of our former congregational presidents. The Levines moved to the Dallas area a couple of years ago, and for people who lived in California before, you can sub out floods and fires and those kind of things, but we know what it's like to have our lives upended. And
Yes.
again,
Yes,
we had some fires and stuff that happened during this pandemic even, so there were people who were double hit like Texas is now. So anyways, let's pray for all those people in Texas. And again, we're glad you got power and you're with us, because I got another email from somebody in the Houston area that said he's a musician and he's not able to do. He does a lot. He's actually, you've seen him. He's Joe Buchanan, the guy from. He's a great musician, and he told me that he can't do any of his Shabbat stuff this week because he doesn't know when he's going to have power again. So he's on a generator, I guess, but I don't know. They're using limited energy. So anyways, this is going to go on for a week. It sounds like.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question before we get started
Yeah.
with tonight's portion?
Yeah.
I was reading it this morning, and I'm realizing, because I've read it many times. In fact, there was one year that I actually
taught
led
it.
the class. Yeah.
You taught it. I remember that.
But, it's so detailed, and we know this that the Torah was written many years later.
Yep.
It's just it's mind-boggling how detailed this portion is.
So, and it gets back to something that we've been talking about, over these last weeks, the Exodus book by my professor, Richard Friedman. He actually, I was actually going to show this. I did not know that you were going to bring that up, and
I'm sorry. I can back up, and
no, because we were definitely going to share this. It's probably, again, one of the most important points of the Torah portion, but I had it all queued up, ready to go. So here actually, you know what? Let me put us up on the interwebs, and I'm going to hope everyone else is doing good, and at least those of us in California are for a change, it's not our state that's gone to hell. I don't want to say that, but right. I just kind of realized normally it's us.
60s,
what?
We're still in the 60s, which is wonderful. We're not down to 32 degrees.
It's true.
Yeah, we're going to get the 80s next week.
Oh my gosh. You know what? It was funny too, because I went out, I had to, of course, take the dog out. I'm taking dogs out now. And it's a little windy and cold. And it's like, of course it's windy. It's February. Cool. It's supposed to be windy and cold. But anyways, it's
February.
Yeah. I think it is. So we had we had a little touch of winter down here. Diane, what's it like up north? What's it like in San Jose right now?
It got into maybe upper 50, low 60, something like that. But I have to tell you, my son from here and his girlfriend are on their way to Dallas to pick up a trailer that they bought. So they're in Yosemite tonight, looking at the fire fall, the waterfall that at night has a glow. And then they're going to go to around Arizona, the Petrified Forest. Then they're going to, in a couple days, be in Dallas to pick up a trailer.
Oh, wow. So hopefully,
it's crazy.
Well, I hope they don't get, too badly affected by what's going on. Not a good time to go to Texas, but I mean, obviously some people have no choice. They got to go to Texas.
No, they don't listen to their mother anymore.
No. Well, anyways, so to Mike's question and to the theme of tonight's Torah portion, Terumah, which is all about the creation of the directions to the tabernacle. And so Mike's point is, why do we have such very intricate details for this? And again, Professor Friedman's view is that it actually contains an important element to what might be one of the authorial clues, like figuring out who wrote the Bible, because the description of this actually seems to comport to the later holy place, the Beit HaMikdash, the holy temple. Remember, the tabernacle, as I've put up here on the screen here for you to see, is the portable sanctuary. It's the ark and the tent and the outer tent, and that's what we're going to read about, and the altar, which we're going to read about today. And actually the menorah too. So there's some things that will make their way into the Beit HaMikdash, and I'll pop up the Beit HaMikdash in a second. I'll show you that too. But there is this interesting kind of clue. There's an interesting clue in here, which is that maybe what's being described here is also something that was part of the temple when the temple was built. That there might have been the temple's dimensions might actually be a recreation of, or if you will, a ghost of what this tabernacle was, and so that the tabernacle dimensions actually are more about the dimensions of the temple, the first temple, than they are necessarily of the tabernacle.
And what's funny is you're always taught that the reason why the temple is the way it is because of this.
Yeah, and look, this is where you kind of have to use, I would say, kind of common sense, which is this: we don't know for sure when this was written, or when we have guesses and there's theories of when this section of Exodus that we're reading would have been written by the authorship, but it would have been written after the temple was built. So after 1000, so after Solomon. So the testimonies could have been there, obviously the dimensions, but so your point, Mike, which with the dimensions seem and the decoration seem way too precise.
Oh yeah.
So one would kind of say that, look, 400 years later or 200 years later, maybe at the most, maybe at the least 200 years away from the events, the details seem to be more. It would make more sense that they had to do with the temple rather than the tabernacle.
Well, absolutely, because when you pass down stories generation to generation, how this is being done is you're going to lose these dimensions.
Yeah, and the detail, the level of detail is going to be tough to also account for.
Exactly. Yeah.
So here's what the Beit HaMikdash, the permanent structure will look like. And you can see, look, and again, these are artists' conceptions based on very detailed drawings, but again, you have to imagine some of it, right? And so these are just artists' estimates of based on the dimensions, because there are dimensions given. There are we don't have architectural we don't have much left of the first temple. We have some things that we think are from the first temple that are actually archaeological remains, but we really only have the descriptions, and the descriptions in Exodus, and then the descriptions in the Book of Kings during the time of Solomon about what that Beit HaMikdash looked like. So if you look at the temple, and then and we'll go back to the tabernacle, you can see that there are some similarities. You can see that there's they're kind of they're rectangular in basic dimensions. And so Friedman, essentially, his theory is that the building, the Beit HaMikdash, hold it a second. I don't know if that's the Beit HaMikdash actually at one point was a representation of the tabernacle. So that if there wasn't a tent there, which there might have been, he says there might have actually been a tent at one point there, but more likely the tent wasn't there, but the inside of the Beit HaMikdash would remind us of that place. Much like if we were building a temple, a synagogue temple today, we might throw in representations of the Beit HaMikdash. So we might say, we're building this temple and we want to make it a little bit like the temple in Jerusalem. And obviously there's an example of that. There's the Heichal Shlomo, the temple of the Jerusalem Synagogue, what we call the Great Jerusalem Synagogue, that we've stayed next to in the old city in Jerusalem. And that synagogue is built on the dimensions, or on the style, if you will, more of kind of an artistic style, architectural style of the Heichal Shlomo, of the actual temple in Jerusalem. So it's got Jerusalem stone, it's got pillars in the front, and it has kind of an artistic, I'll show you that too. It has kind of an artistic tribute to the Beit HaMikdash, to the first permanent worship space of that. So again, there are other synagogues in the world that have had artistic or architectural tributes, if you will, to the here, I'll show you a picture of the temple in Jerusalem now. This is the Great Synagogue, which has been, we've stayed actually.
We're not seeing anything, Rabbi.
Hold it one second.
Okay.
Let me get this up there. But yeah, thank you for, is it up there now?
No,
No.
it's just your screen sharing.
Hold it. It says I'm screen sharing, but it's not working, right?
Right.
Okay, so let me try one other thing. Optimize.
It was earlier.
I know, but I think I've tacked.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay, so there you see it now, right?
Yeah.
So this is the modern temple and the modern, not temple, it's the modern synagogue in Jerusalem. But you can see they built it with kind of a stylistic interpretation of what the temple Beit HaMikdash looked like. So when this was built in the 60s in the old city, but in now the Jewish section of Jerusalem, it's not in the old city. It's not in the walled city. It's in the Jewish, it's by the Knesset. It's actually right across from the hotel that we normally stay at now in Jerusalem, the Leonardo. It's right across the street from there, and it's in an area where the Jewish National Fund building is. Right next door is right here's the JNF building, and it's a bunch of Jewish complexes, to religious and governmental complexes. It's not far from the Y either. It's not that close to the Y, which is not Jewish, but is also built with Jerusalem stone. Actually, everything that's been built in the last 100 years has to be built with Jerusalem stone. There was a small window of time when Israel, before Israel was established in the 1940s, when some buildings in Jerusalem got built without Jerusalem stone, but it's been the law, the building code for years, that all of it has to be done in this white limestone. So,
Rabbi, that synagogue, how inside, how many people would it seat? Just curious how.
So you can see, and down here is the kind of the stained glass from one of the sides. It holds, I want to say it probably holds pretty close to about 1,000 people. It's
really
decent, yeah, it's a decent sized synagogue, and it definitely, it's kind of the official Orthodox synagogue for the government. I mean, there's no official, there's a head chief rabbi, but it's more like, again, this is here, I'll tell you, it is 56 King George Street. The style was modeled on the Jewish temple by German architect Alexander Friedman. The inauguration took place on Tu B'Av in 1982, and it holds 850 men, and the upper section holds actually 550 women. So it actually holds
more than
almost 1,400 people. So I've never actually been up into the women's section, and that's how I had no idea that it held that many people. And it is one of those synagogues, you can kind of tell by how high it is, that it has a men's section down below and a women's gallery up above. So I didn't realize it.
Does it fill up like on like Friday or Saturday mornings?
Not on Fridays and Saturdays, but
on high holidays.
But it is on high holidays packed. And I'm just looking to see if there's anything about their,
Is that me?
Did he freeze?
Are you frozen, Mark, or am I frozen?
He's frozen.
Yeah, he's frozen.
The rabbi.
It's typical. At least once.
And he's not even.
Yeah, and it's only supposed to be frozen in Dallas. Here we are.
Now, Jared, how long is that supposed to last? Did you know?
Tomorrow it will finally get to 34 degrees.
Oh, there it gets warm.
Oh,
Yes, and
Wait.
Diane, I
word.
wanted to tell you that it is in just a few days, and like Monday, Monday it's going to be 55.
There you
and-
go.
and
Okay.
by Tuesday we'll be in the 60s.
Okay. Because our daughter lives in Kalamazoo and I talked to her on Sunday and they've been getting snow like all week.
And my son, who was supposed to go near Plano, the
Yes.
company wants him closer to the GM plant in Arlington.
Whenever I do too much sharing, I get that. So
Hi,
unfortunately,
welcome back.
yeah, thank you. Whenever I do too much sharing, you know, it just too much for my internet to share that many pictures. So I could start to see that it was going to do that. But anyways, I'm looking back on. I'm on my phone right now. But yeah, my computer. It must be my computer. I don't think it's Zoom. I think
It's
it's just.
road.
Yeah, I think it's just my computer. It gets overwhelmed by Zoom.
How much
and
RAM
by-
do you have on your computer, Mark?
I don't know. Look, I moved to this laptop. I think it's like 16, but I think what happens is that doing so much on Safari and on Zoom, overloads it. But I had to kind of go to that computer because it has a built-in camera. So I'm on a laptop while we're doing this class, which I love using a laptop. I can take it anywhere, and I can be mobile with. But I will tell you that this is not the first time. Obviously, unfortunately, guys, this has happened. Really, it usually happens on Wednesday nights for some reason. Tuesdays, it doesn't happen very often. Mike, you're there both times. It doesn't happen very much on Tuesdays.
Very seldom on
What?
Tuesdays. Very seldom on Tuesdays. Only on Wednesdays.
It could be.
So I think it's
It could
Joyce's
be also
fault.
that it's the computer's tired. The computer's tired at the end of the day. I'm going to start doing something on Wednesdays, though. I'm going to start restarting my computer.
We lost you again.
Yeah, I think it's definitely Joyce's fault.
Oh, we figured it out. It's all my fault. I deserve the blame.
It's a good thing you don't come on Tuesdays, you know.
All right.
I'm
So
working then. I can't come on Tuesday mornings. I'm
She's
seeing
working.
clients. I'm working. You're lucky. I'm not
Yeah, because
blaming.
Rabbi, we're blaming Joyce for this every Wednesday.
No, I'm going to fix it by, like I said, by not going by restarting my computer, because I think it's the end of the day too. I think I've done so.
So you're basically, your computer's on all day?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be a problem. That could be a problem too.
Oh yeah.
Computer gets
It's
tired.
on all day, Mike. Sometimes I think if my computer had had its own voice, it would tell me to just kill it. Stop.
Enough already.
Stop abusing me like this. No,
But you would have done better if you had 32 RAM though.
Okay. I hear you. That's actually, you know what? It's a good point too, but I think for the cheap.
But you, like you said, you don't have problems Tuesday and it's in the morning. So it if you restarted it.
Yeah, I
you know, right
definitely
before class.
have 16, by the way. 100%.
Okay.
It's 16, but it happens when I start sharing the screen. It doesn't happen until I start like going to other screens. And when I start doing other screens, that's where.
Well, that's
where it starts to-
that's your RAM.
Yeah, exactly. It's too much. I'm overloading my poor computer. So he or she, I don't know.
To the Torah. Come on.
Maybe
Back
it's
to the Torah.
maybe it's she. I don't know. But here, I'm going to put it up. And again, apologies for the technical glitch. And by the way, it probably won't happen again. You notice? Anyways, so in Terumah, which literally means, and again, we had Mike knows this portion really well, as he taught it before. It actually comes from, you can see, you have to go into the second verse and you have to go all the way 1, 2, 3. That's a hyphenated word, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words into, or actually 5 or 7 words if you say the hyphenated words are 2 words, It's quite a few words into it, but that's because the Torah portion begins, the Lord spoke to Moses saying, which indicates, by the way, to us, he didn't speak to all the people, because as we know in the previous line, Moses went inside the cloud and ascended on the mountain, and Moses remained on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. So this portion and much of the next two portions, or all the next portion and some of the next portion after that, all take place, the events take place during those 40 days that Moses is up on Mount Sinai, up in that cloud, up in the place where the people can't see him and can't hear God.
And he doesn't have a computer to write down all the dimensions either.
We assume that God downloaded it directly to his brain, because
Of course.
or he got a written version of it on Mount Sinai, which is another thing that, when people say, how did Moses get the Torah? He gets it at Mount Sinai. So the idea that he doesn't just get the 10 Commandments, but he actually is up there for 40 days writing all of this down. Well, let's back up for a second. He's up there for 40 days and 40 nights. Why does he need to be up there for 40 days and 40 nights? It shouldn't be that long for Moses to just get the 10 Commandments.
You ever try writing on a rock, notes? Well, it's going to take 40 days and 40 nights.
Even for you or me, we're not accomplished chiselers. We're not chiselers. We're not chiselers, but we would not. Yes, I would say 40 days would not be acceptable. By the way, I would give up after 10. But if it's just the 10 Commandments, it's still a long time. So the idea that he's up there to get more than the 10 Commandments, look, it's kind of borne out by the 40 days and 40 nights business.
Yeah.
So the fact that he got more than just the 10 Commandments, maybe more than just the dimensions, because in all fairness, I don't care how slow he writes or chisels, it's still, these next few portions wouldn't be that time consuming. So there is this kind of sense that maybe there's a lot more information coming there. Now, again, 40 days and 40 nights is a symbolic amount of time. It's not, it's a time of purification, a time of renewal, a time of when we talk about the 40 days before Rosh Hashanah, and then the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the month before, and then those 40 days of Elul and the first 10 days of Tishrei. That's a 40-day period that we have for reflection every year. We talk about, of course, the 40 days and 40 nights it rained during the flood, during Noah's Ark. These are times of purification, times of it's a symbolic 4 times 10, obviously. It's a number of symbolic magnitude, but it's also a month plus, another, if you will, another third of a month.
So Rabbi, would you also consider the 40 years being symbolic too?
Yeah. And clearly 40 is a symbolic number, right? 4 times 10 is going to be an important number. But 40 days for Moses to be gone, as we know, is going to be problematic. Did God not see that Moses being gone for 40 days was going to be problematic? Because again, we're going to see what happens at the end of this time up there, what happens. And maybe he pushed it a little too far. But what does Moses need to be up there for? One can make the argument, if not to get a lot of information. So this is part of that kind of, how much did he get? Did he just get what he gets by the time he comes down? Or did he get more than that? Which of course means that the story as it's unfolding is already known by Moses, because it's already been written. So everything in the Torah would, like all the events in the book of Numbers, would have already been written already. And so they'd be unfolding as they're happening. But I mean, that's part of, I don't know that people have sat out and really thought about all the conclusions from this, because people have just said, okay, the Torah was written by Moses by God's instruction. And so you could say the book of, I mean, you could say, yes, all of this happened as Moses wrote it down on Mount Sinai, and he knew the whole end of the whole Torah at Mount Sinai. The other possibility is that Moses writes it down as it's unfolding until the very last line and last lines when he's dead, and then Joshua finishes it up. Or that Moses wrote about his own death, which there are also midrashim that he wrote about his own death, and his tears mixed with the ink as he was writing about his own death. But where that even comes from, folks, is this idea that, number one, he's on the mountain for 40 days, as we just read. And number two, if Moses doesn't get it at Mount Sinai, at that nexus point where he's in heaven, because remember, according to tradition, when Moses is on Mount Sinai, he's not just on the mountain anymore. He's entered another dimension where he's with God. And so if the Torah isn't revealed in that moment, if the Torah laws aren't given then, and then they don't have the same kind of import that they do if Moses writes it down 20 years later or 30 years later while he's in the desert. So that's kind of a weird consequence of this idea that everything that is in the Torah has to be at Mount Sinai. But that's what we say. We call it Torah mi Sinai in Hebrew, Torah from Sinai. We don't say Torah from the Torah. We say Torah from that moment that Moses was on Mount Sinai. So this is what we grapple with when we talk about what's happening at Mount Sinai. So to some extent, we read about creation of holy spaces last week, even at the end of Mishpatim, and at the end, as we said, of Yitro, we already read about the creation of the altar. Last week we started getting a little bit more about the creation of holy space, and now we're that's all we get today. So let's take a look. We'll probably actually, even though you're kind of now starting kind of a little into the text later, the reality is that there isn't as much. We're not going to stop as much as we normally do because these are largely descriptions of stuff. But we'll pause occasionally to kind of talk about things that are unusual. And please interrupt or stop if something grabs you as we do this. So it says, speak to the children of Israel, right? Tell the Israelite people to bring me gifts, which is what Terumah means. It means gifts. You shall accept gifts for me from every person whose heart so moves him. And again, the word again is Terumah here. It says from people who want to do it. It doesn't say that everyone has to give. It doesn't say what everybody has to give, but it says that everybody will be moved to give if they want to give, you take it from them. Which is interesting because what if Moses didn't like what the person brought? I mean, it could be that people bring something and you don't really know what to do with it. I mean, it happens that, I don't know that it happens a lot to us anymore, but I think probably the most common thing that would happen to us now, where we'd get something and we would be like, what do I do with it? Well, what if somebody gives you a gift of some food and they want you to put it out at the meal? And you're like, I don't want to serve this. What do you do? I mean, to some extent, you do things because you don't want to hurt someone's feelings. But that's probably the closest thing that we could have to Moses being told by God, it doesn't matter what the people bring you. They're it's not for you, it's for me. And if their heart, it's coming from their heart, then we want it. We need to have it. It needs to be there. What we do with it, well, we're going to have some details, and you're going to see it's pretty amazing, because these are people that are living in the wilderness. How do they have all this stuff? Some of it, it's just amazing. These are the gifts that you shall accept from them: gold, silver, and copper, blue, purple, and crimson yarns, fine linen, goat's hairs, tanned ram skins, and there it is right there, tachashim, which we translate now as dolphin skins, and acacia wood. Oil for lighting, spices for the anointing oil, and for the aromatic incense, lapis lazuli, and other stones for setting, for the ephod and for the breastpiece.
Rabbi,
Yes.
like we talked about many times, dolphin skin isn't what we think of dolphin, correct?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Yeah, because where would they get dolphin skins from in the desert? And
Right.
tachash, in a lot of translations now, is not being translated at all. You know, I was just going to check out what the King James translated it as when they had this. Let me just tell you.
Mary's Bible says badger.
What? Badger?
Yeah, badger skin.
Holy moly.
What version do you have?
I think it's King James.
Let me see right here.
Yeah, she has King James, Rabbi.
It does?
Yeah.
So the New International Version has the New International, which a lot of churches use today, a lot of Protestant churches, uses the translation as durable leather. Durable leather. And then it says a footnote, possibly the hides of large aquatic animals. So that was where it's the dugong, which is like a manatee, which they do have in the Middle East, you know, in the Red Sea. And according to modern insights, I would say that it is possible that people use those skins. Yes, Mary is 100% King James with badger skin. That's the King James translation. I did not know that it was badger in King James. I'm not even sure where they got that from. I have no idea how. I don't know how the King James folks and again, look, these are people that are living in England in, King James days, which are, late 1500s, early 1600s. I'm not sure, how, look, they asked philologists of the day in the King James period. They talked to the King James writers, talked to Jews or people who had recently been Jewish. Maybe some of them were new converts to Christianity, and asked them, what do you think Tachash is? So it may not be that they, that they went right to their own imagination of it. Look, the issue is that Rashi, who lives in Middle Ages, but Middle Ages, we're talking about like 400 years before King James. He says it's a unicorn. So, I only want to tell you that people have had a hard time imagining what this was for a long time. The Tachash, being a large aquatic animal, is more of a modern reconstruction using Arabic and other sources of languages, sources in the Middle East, where that's what Tachash refers to is an aquatic mammal, either a dolphin or, again, this manatee type animal. Again, it definitely seems like it's something of value. It's not just your typical leather, because again, ram skins are specifically, a ram skin is definitely more expensive than lamb skin, because it actually says ram. And so, assumedly, it's, it's more expensive than lamb skin. And then maybe again, dolphin skin is even more. The acacia wood, what we call shittim in Hebrew, that's the wood in the desert. So that's not, or the wilderness. I mean, that's not expensive wood. On the other hand, it's the only wood they had. So yeah, you could have brought in beams from other places, but you can't replace it, right? So it doesn't make sense if they're using this and they are going to need wood for the beams, for the things that are going to hold the tent, leather. If something breaks and you have to get something made out of cedar from Lebanon, you can't have that delivered to the desert. They didn't have Amazon back then. They're going to have a problem. So they got to use the local wood. They got to source the local wood. The other stuff, you can make the argument, the gold could get stolen. It could disappear, you could say, but if they have the gold, then they're going to have it, they're going to have it later on too. But having something that they can use in the desert, especially something that will be a little bit more dispensable, like the wood, they got to use the local wood. So that's the only thing there that's not really, really expensive. The other stuff, again, according to tradition, this is stuff they took with them from Egypt. Oil for lighting, spices for anointing oil, and other aromatic incense. Those are all things that you can get in the desert. So the disposable stuff is all stuff that you could get locally. You could source it in your backyard, if you will. So it says this very famous phrase, "V'asu li mikdash v'shachanti betocham." Let them make me a sanctuary, and I will dwell amongst them. Has anyone ever heard that phrase before? This phrase here? Anybody?
Yeah, last year, Rabbi.
Anybody else? Does anybody else have a this is oftentimes put as the line, if you will. This is the line that some people use that line and let them bring their.
Well, I've actually, Rabbi, seriously though, I've seen it at other synagogues.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is this is oftentimes like on the wall. This is what people oftentimes put on the front of their synagogue, or by
maybe not the exact words that we're reading there, but very similar.
No, oftentimes it's written in Hebrew, and then you've got to find it. You don't find the translation. You got to just kind of.
No, I've seen it in English, but not exactly these words, but very similar.
Yeah, and it's used oftentimes in churches too, because, technically speaking, anybody who wants to create a holy space, a sanctuary, this is the hope is that God is in that space that you created for it. So this is oftentimes the line, the motto of the portion.
And you know where I saw it, Rabbi, is in the temple in St. Martin.
I think you're absolutely right.
I remember that now with the sand floor.
Yep, I think it's there. It's definitely a lot of synagogues. It is I would say kind of, if you're looking for a line that kind of will, from the Bible, establish why the building is important, that is a great line. And that word again, v'shachanti betocham, I will dwell among them, which, by the way, also implies that God is there with us and amongst the people. That's what the word means. I'm not going to be, there's 2 points about this line, and it's such an important line. It's 5 words of Hebrew, but again, it's such a powerful line. First of all, the word shachanti means I will dwell, and it's the root for the word mishkan, which is what the tabernacle is called in Hebrew. It's the mishkan, the dwelling place of God. It's also the root for the word Shekhinah, which you also have heard before, the divine presence. So the word shachan is the root for those words in Hebrew, and it's to dwell, it's to be, it's to live amongst, or to be, and not to be alive, but to be present, if you will, and then to be near. But the other word tocham means amongst them. And what's so cool about this phrase, and it is really, we have to look at every word, right? And what the significance of the word is amongst them. It doesn't say, if you notice what it says, it doesn't say, make me a sanctuary, let them make me a sanctuary and I will dwell in it. Because if the point of building the sanctuary was to contain God, then this is kind of a weird idea that God is going to be in the building, and the building itself is holy. The presence of God fills the building because the people are there too. It's not like people are there and then, well, it doesn't really matter. It 100% matters because it doesn't say in the building, but amongst the people. And so the place is a place where God and human beings come together, not for God to sit there in an empty space. The people, it doesn't say inside it, it says among them. And so God's presence is part of the fabric of the building itself with the people there. And it's really kind of amazing that the Torah puts that there. Because again, if this was a pagan sanctuary, the assumption could kind of be that God dwells in this building that we've made. So we built Zeus the Acropolis, and now Zeus, it's the highest place in the city, and it's where Zeus God will be, because that's where God will be. And maybe the priests can go there, and maybe it's a reminder that when we look up, we see God, and God's bigger than us. The temple and the Mishkan before it are places where God and human beings come together, where people can feel divine presence, not to look up at a building and say, that's where God is. So it's a really powerful phrase. And it's one of the reasons why it's not just people are taking the initiative and the effort to build a building. That's cool. But it's that God is there with us in the building once it's there, not because God's in that building, but because we're in that building to be with God.
Well, that's also, I remember when I was a kid, we met at a church, and it really didn't matter where you met because God was amongst us.
Yep. And that's the message of the space, right? Is that obviously you want to have a space that affirms and that helps that sense of connection with God. But it doesn't matter, because if we're there and we've created a sanctuary for God, then God is there with us. And that's
exactly.
Really,
it's
really
like when
important.
we met at the hotel, for high holidays.
Yep. And I really do believe that. I mean, that if we create a space, and the tradition tells us, if we create a space and we let God in, God will be there with us. So you could basically say that this is the idea of what we do when we pray and gather together, is that God is there with us, amongst us, betocham, with us. So exactly as I show you the pattern of the tabernacle, and again, there's the word flat out, hamishkan. And this is the Mishkan. This is the tabernacle, which is why it has a capital T. And the pattern of all its furnishings, so shall you make it. And of course, the you here is the plural you, not just one person. They shall make an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. So again, this is the ark. That is the ark for the covenant, the ark of the law, the ark of the 10 commandments. It is of course going to be, just put that, probably, I'm probably pushing it, but I'm going to show it as we're going to. You do have to see, obviously, once again, we have to show a little bit of what
But as you're doing that, Rabbi, when it says a cubit here and a cubit there, my cubit is bigger than your cubit. So if I'm cutting wood and you're cutting wood,
Yeah.
no, we'd have a problem.
Yeah, and one could make the argument it could be a few inches off, right? If one person's measuring one piece of wood and one person's measuring the other side, it wouldn't work. But the reality is that they did have, by the way, they did have measuring sticks. They actually had.
Oh, they did?
Yeah,
Okay.
they actually had measuring sticks that were, this was a standard cubit. So they did.
Okay.
They did agree on those things. And again, before they machine manufacturing, of course, the things were a little not necessarily always 100%, but they came pretty close. And as we're still amazed at what Egyptians did and what people did in literally cavemen did at Stonehenge, it's pretty amazing how they were able to get these measurements into a place where they could do these amazing constructions. So this is minor compared in some ways to that. But again, the ark here I put up here on the screen is the ark that you've seen in the Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is one version of it, an artistic view of the Kruvim. I'm not wild about these pictures because I think they don't give us a full idea of what maybe the angels look like, but we'll get to that in a second. But it does have gold on the outside. It says overlay it with pure gold, overlay it inside and out, and make upon it a gold molding around about, which of course means that inside of the ark had gold as well. Now, no one saw the inside of the ark. You couldn't open the ark. God forbid, you couldn't even touch the ark. But the point is that we didn't skimp on it, right? If you only put the expensive stuff on the parts you see, then it's a facade. And so the point of this is saying, we're not skimping on this. We're not cutting back on what we could do. We're actually making this 100% the best that we can make it inside and out, which of course is a metaphor for what we offer to God all the time, which is our best, and that we don't skimp on the things we're supposed to do. So we overlay it with pure gold. And again, interestingly, we start with the items that we're going to need, right? The ingredients, if you will, the materials. It's like the checklist that you have at the beginning of your instruction manual. Same deal. These are the screws you've got. These are the items you've got in your box. And now we're going to tell you how to make it. What's interesting about this construction, of course, is we start with the center of it. We start with the ark, the smallest piece of it, or one of the smallest pieces of it. And then, bless you, and then we move our way out. We're gonna build around it. But first we're gonna build the focal point, the ark itself. And then we're going to move out. So let's look at the ark. It says, cast 4 rings of gold on it to be attached to its 4 feet. 2 rings on each of its side walls and 2 on the other. So again, these are for the poles of acacia wood, shittim, again, same thing, those wood. Overlay them with gold. So the poles had gold on them as well. Which, by the way, I just want to point this out. I'm not going to harp on it, but this is the page that Wikipedia, the picture that Wikipedia put up. I don't see those poles being overlaid with gold. Those look pretty wooden to me. I mean, if you're going to make if you're going to make a replica of it, why wouldn't you follow the directions? It says the poles are overlaid with gold. I don't know, minor point, but I do want to point out that people didn't do their homework. Which again, the poles are for practical reasons. They're not for artistic aesthetics. They're for carrying the thing, right? You got to have strong poles.
No wonder the CEO of Wikipedia just resigned. She made mistakes.
Well, that's whoever edited that page. Look, there's a lot of good stuff on Torah stuff on there, but that's lazy. That's just lazy. So insert the poles into but it's lazy. It wasn't just Wikipedia was lazy. The person who made that thing that, in the first place, that's a replica. Somebody actually built that. I don't understand why you wouldn't follow the directions. Anyways, also the whole thing isn't really overlaid in gold. They just put the top in gold. But yeah, Wikipedia whoever posted that shouldn't have put up that picture.
Right.
So the poles go on the rings of the side for carrying the ark. The poles shall remain in the rings of the ark. They shall not be removed from it. So it's not like you had to pull them in and out all the time, because people said, well, that would have not been good on the gold, the gold rings on the gold. Well, they really don't come apart. They're not supposed to come apart. It says, deposit in the ark the tablets of the pact, which I will give you, which again, assumedly they get the dimensions of the ark before he actually has the 10 commandments to put them in. So he's saying, I'm going to give it to you, but in the meantime, you make the ark, or this is what the ark will look like for what I'm going to have you put in it. You shall make a cover of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide. Make 2 keruvim of gold, make them of hammered work at the 2 ends of the cover. And so that's what you have in that picture. Make 1 cherub at one end and 1 cherub at the other end, and of 1 piece with the cover, you shall make the cherubim at its 2 ends. So the cover has to have the keruvim, and that is the ark. That is the ark. Here's a couple better depictions of it, though I will tell you, people get freaked out by this. There's something to be said for the fact that people do not like this. This one, I'm going to show you this one. This one's a little bit more modern interpretation, but at least this one's made out of gold.
Mm-hmm.
And the poles were made out of gold. Somebody followed directions a little bit better. But you can see that people, especially Jews, Christians don't get as freaked out by this generally as we do. Jews get freaked out by it. We do. I mean, I'm just telling you honestly. And you know why? It seems kind of idolatrous.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of is like, well, wait, God, you just told us not to make any idols in the 10 Commandments a couple of weeks ago. These seem like idols. How is this not an idol?
There is one other thing that doesn't make sense, and that is this: if it is covered in gold rods and everything, it's got to be heavy to carry through the desert all the time. It's a very heavy piece.
Yes. Now,
they just put it on their pickup truck.
There's
Of course they did.
There's an argument. Yeah. What would the ark have weighed? Now, again, assuming that they have 2 or 3 people on each side, you got six strong people that can lift it on each side. It still would have been quite heavy. But again, this idea that these angels are kind of looking like human beings, like the angels that we see in Christian artwork,
Mm-hmm.
kind of misses the point of what the keruvim probably really look like, which were a little bit more like Near Eastern, what we would assume Near Eastern or Egyptian stylistic drawings, which are or images that we've had, because we don't exactly know what other people, how they drew their kind of keruvim, but we know they have wings. I mean, obviously the wings are a big part of it, but were these angels that look like human beings that had wings, or were they more animalistic? Did they look more like animals with just a face of a human being? Look, everybody's got kind of everyone's got kind of a problem with with what these would look like, but the images, and again, I'm going to share one now here too.
That last one you showed looked like a phoenix and not really an angel or a cherubim.
Yep. Now I'm probably going to screw up my computer again right now, but honestly, it's about to go. But it is a problem that we don't know what these things look like. But the idea that they look like angels, like we think they look, probably isn't accurate. Probably a little bit more like a Near Eastern mythic composite animal beast with maybe but again, the bigger issue is it seems kind of idolatrous. But what we know from the Torah itself is that there is a difference between creating a cherub, which is not a god, clearly not a god. It's a if anything, it's the footstool or the throne or the chariot of God. It's what carries God around. So it clearly can't be a god. It's God's car, if you will. Nobody would worship that. It doesn't make sense. Why would you worship the thing that God rides around on? Not so. If God's presence is supposed to hover over these things as kind of a symbolic place, but again, because it's so against our kind of idea of creating statues, it's always been problematic for those that are more traditional because it seems so idolatrous. So even looking at those designs, this is something that the Orthodox world doesn't feel very comfortable with. Let's put it that way. So I will tell you that this is, I'll show you. I'll try to show one more picture. This is what a cherub looked like on this is a Neo-Assyrian seal. This is what could have looked like too. So not quite the angelic thing that we have in our minds, but that's more contemporaneous. That was from 1000 BCE. So just keep that in mind. All right, so let's get back to the cherubim. There's one on each end, right? They're facing each other. You see that in all the representations. The cherubim shall have their wings spread out above, shielding the cover with their wings. They shall confront each other, the faces of the cherubim being turned toward the cover. So again, they're always depicted that way. And again, there's lessons about that. Why are there two of them? Why are they facing each other? Again, one of the theories is that it's because God is resting on top of that. It's just a symbol of God being on top of that space. There's a old midrash that there was a masculine form and a feminine form, and that they represent the balance of the male and female, that God is at peace and has a home when those things are not just confrontational in a negative way, but they're balanced, and there should be a balance in that. And it's that's not like a feminist midrash. That's a ancient midrash that there needs to be a balance in the world between those things. Okay. Let's see here. Everybody is with us here. There I will meet with you, and I will impart to you from the cover, from between the cherubim that are on top of the pact, the Ark of the Pact, all that I will command you concerning the Israelite people. All right. So this is a point of, am I frozen again?
No.
Okay, good. I hope I'm not. So this is the ark, as you can see, seems to be the place where God will, it's a nexus point, because when God says that I will meet you there and impart to you from above the cover, from between the cherubim, it seems as though, again, it's like that's the place, like that's the point of contact. And that's why in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, that's why that is, the way he describes it is that this is a radio center for God, that this is where God focuses energy, is on this point. So if there's a holy place, like where God really is there and is like the most there, it's there above the ark, which is why the ark is so important. And again, maybe why it's described first. You shall make a table of acacia wood, 2 cubits long and 1 cubit wide and 1.5 cubits high. Overlay it with pure gold and make gold molding around it. Make a rim of a hand's breadth and make a gold molding for its rim around about. Make 4 gold rings for it and attach the rings to the 4 corners at its 4 legs. So this is another description of the rings shall be next to the rim as holders for poles to carry the table. Make the poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. By these the table shall be carried. So this is the table, well, where again, it's not the, this table is not the place where, is not as necessarily, again, it's not the ark, but it's also made out of gold. It's also being carried. And what happens on the table is this, this table, which again in Hebrew is shulchan, which by the way is the same word we use for the table, the desk that you might be sitting at right now, or the table that you eat off of. So it's a biblical word, shulchan, but it literally means a table. But obviously this table is special because you have bowls, ladles, jars, jugs, which you offer libations. You make those of pure gold too. And on the table you shall set the bread of display, the lechem panim, to be before me always. And this is the holy bread, the show bread, the shoe bread as it's translated, that was used as a continuous offering. So there was always this lechem panim, which literally means that it says bread of display. But again, the word panim, like again, you know the word in Hebrew and Yiddish, punim, it means face. This is the bread of face. This is the bread of what God sees. And so this is essentially like a continuous offering. So in addition to offerings that are burned up, there's also this bread that's put up for God to see. You shall make a lampstand of pure gold, and the lampstand shall be made of hammered work. Its base and its shaft, its cups, its calyxes, and its petals shall be of one piece. And this is the menorah. This is something that, again, obviously very important. It is the menorah, the lights that will be lit. There's oil that we already heard is going to be for it. But again, this is made out of zahav tahor, pure gold, which is very, very heavy, as Joyce has already pointed out. It's also made of intricate designs, which are very hard really to do in pure gold. That's why we don't use pure gold. Honestly, the reason that we don't use pure gold for most jewelry is because if it's made with pure gold, it melts. It literally can't hold up to its own weight. So, obviously people want to have as close to the pure gold as possible. Like we have 24 karat or, whatever carats people have to use. But if you're having a more intricate design, you almost have to degrade the gold so that it holds together, because really pure gold, if you rub it too hard, right? If you rub it together, it loses its form. It's so malleable, right? That it just kind of like starts to lose its shape. So, interesting to think whether this needed to be hammered out, not once, but frequently. So this menorah, the original menorah, 6 branches shall issue from its sides, 3 branches from one side of the lampstand and 3 branches from the other side of the lampstand. And on one branch, there shall be 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms. Well, we're going to have to show this too, right? We have to show what the menorah looked like too. But you can see each had a calyx and petals. And on the next branch, there shall be 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with a calyx and petals for all 6 branches issuing from the lampstand. And on the lampstand itself, there shall be 4 cups like almond blossoms, each with calyx and petals. A calyx of one piece with it under a pair of branches, and a calyx of one piece with it under the second pair of branches, and a calyx of one piece with it under the last pair of branches, for all 6 branches issuing from the lampstand. So this is quite a quite a intricate design, and I really do need to show this a little bit. And again, people have built what this looked like, because it's not just calyxes in it's not just calyxes in at the top. I don't want to show that one. I will show a good one here. So I will show one so you can actually, well, this one is, no, I'm not going to show that one either. Some of these just don't look up. They don't look good when we show them. Here, let's see if this one works. Oh, no, hold it a second. Sorry. These are all on Pinterest. Pinterest does not show up. Those do not show up good on the screen. So this one looks pretty good. So this one is, yeah, this one will be, you'll see this good. So, so this is, does everyone see this one?
Yes.
So this one, you can see the calyxes are not just at the tops, but they're actually in the body of the menorah itself. So you have one piece going up the middle, and then on the sides, there's calyxes inside on the branches, so that it looks kind of like a tree with blossoms coming off of the tree. And so again, some people say it's supposed to be representative of the tree of life. That, you know, that this is a art piece of art that also you know, has a representation of the tree of life. So I'll go back to the text, but it's kind of amazing again to think about this kind of intricate design, and you know, you could see pretty intricate. You know, it's pretty intricate and it's pretty detailed, as again Mike was saying from the very beginning. Their calyxes and their stems shall be of one piece with it, the whole of it a singled hammered piece of gold. Make it 7 lamps. The lamps shall be mounted so to give its light on its front side, and its tongs and its fire pans of pure gold. It shall be made with all these furnishings out of a talent of pure gold. And again, the weight of a talent is somewhat, again, relative, or again, what period of time are we talking about? A talent might have changed over time, over a few hundred years, of what a talent of gold would have been, but it's quite a lot. And it's, you know, maybe in the hundreds of pounds of pure gold, which is quite expensive in those days. And these days, any days, that would have been quite an amazing and heavy piece of work, which again, even if the base is made out of gold, this is super heavy. And again, one can make the argument, again, I've talked to people who work in precious metals, not very functional, because it would constantly be kind of falling down and drooping, because it's so hard to keep pure gold from kind of coming back to a blob. So it says, note well and follow the patterns for them that are being shown to you on the mountain. So again, clear that this is all happening on the mountain. So God is saying, pay attention. Now, so after hearing about the construction of the ark, the show table, and the menorah, all important, very important, maybe focal points, if you will, of the tabernacle. Now we're getting into the tabernacle itself, to the tent itself. So as for the tabernacle, you make it out of 10 strips of cloth. Make these of fine twisted linen of purple, blue, purple, and crimson yarns, with a design of kruvim worked into them. So here you have the kruvim also in the artwork of the yarn. It's embroidered into the design cloth. The length of each cloth shall be 28 cubits, and the width of each cloth shall be 4 cubits. So this is this is pretty long. This is pretty tough to weave. I mean, it's quite long. You're talking about 40 feet long, almost 50 feet of length. It's quite a lot. All the cloths shall have the same measurements. 5 of the cloths, so it's not like one is one and one's, they all got to be the same. 5 of the cloths shall be joined together, and the other 5 cloths shall be joined together. So there's your dimensions: 28 cubits for each, 5 on each side, which comes out to 100. 140 cubits on each side. Well, not quite, because actually it doesn't quite say it here, but the way that it was joined, the way that it's joined together, it's 100 cubits on both sides, and then the 40 cubits on both sides joined together on the back. So the back length is 80 cubits, because it's 40 cubits and 40 cubits, and then it kind of makes a long rectangle. So it's about 100 cubits long by 80 cubits in the back. So, which, by the way, if that is the way it's done, and it's not 140 cubits long on both sides, would mean that it would really fit very nicely into the, or maybe didn't have to fit nicely, but imagined, or again, a ghost of it could be in the Beit HaMikdash, which was about 100 cubits long. So, so it says, make loops of blue wool on the edge of the outermost cloth of the one set, and do likewise on the edge of the outermost cloth of the other set. Make 50 loops on one cloth and 50 loops on the edge of the end cloth of the other set, the loops to be opposite one another. And make 50 gold clasps and couple the clasps to one another with the clasps, so that the tabernacle becomes one whole. You shall make the cloths of goat's hairs for a tent of the tabernacle. Make the cloths 11 in numbers. And again, what we're talking about here is the excuse me, I'm going to go back to I'm going to try to get the original picture that I put up in the first design here in Terumah. And this is I'll pop this back up. That one's tough to see. Here we go. Let's see, I'll pop this one up. And so you have the tabernacle in the middle, and then you have the outer tent as well. So, and then you have the outer covering of the tabernacle. So there's there's actually 3 pieces of tent, if you will. There's the tent inside. The problem with this one is you can't actually see the inside tent, but it has the outside of the tabernacle, and then it has the outside for the whole tent of precinct, the tent of meeting. So you can see all 3 descriptions here kind of brought to life. And this was you can see, it's a computer generated. This is a computer generated picture. So this is kind of a cool design of of people now being able to do CAD drawings of how these things would have looked. But it's fascinating to kind of imagine how our ancestors tried to create these holy places. And again, getting back to this issue of how much detail is there. So again, these are the goat's hairs. These are goats. It says they're goats. This is Ezim. And this is this is the outer tent of not the outside, but the outer tent that goes over the tabernacle to protect it. So that it's more of the tent. Like if you ever used a tent and you had the outer, piece of fabric or tent material, whatever, that you put over the tent so that your tent doesn't get wet. It's that. I don't even know what they call that. Somebody who camps a lot will know what that thing's called. But you have your tent and then you have your thing that you put over the tent in case it rains. It's that, so that the water doesn't go and start falling in the tent, right? It's that thing. I don't know what they call that. What do you call it? Somebody's got to know what they call that. I'm not a tent person, so I don't know what it's called. But somebody must know what that thing's called, because I remember the few times that I've gone camping, I don't always put that tent thing up because it's never going to rain here in California. So the odds that I'll actually need that thing, but it does keep like, what's it called?
Say rain fly. Just say rain fly.
A rain fly.
Okay. So that's the thing that's made out of goat's hair. So it's not the building itself, but it's the thing that protects it. It's like the cover you put on your car. You don't have to get a real expensive cover for your car. The fact that you're already covering your car is a cool thing, but you don't have to get a fancy cover. You can just it's usually going to be made out of anything other than a very practical fabric, which is what the goat's hair is. It's going over the top. So the length of each cloth, it says, is 30 cubits, and the width of each cloth shall be 4 cubits. The 11 cloths have to have the same measurements. Join 5 of the cloths by themselves and the other 6 cloths by themselves, and fold over the 6th cloth at the front of the tent. So again, that's kind of the thing that you see as the cover that goes over. That's why it had that cover over the front of it, so that there was a space that people could come in. Can't cover the whole thing, otherwise there's no entry point. But so you have a question of like, did people ever actually see the tabernacle when it wasn't covered? Because if this beautiful tabernacle is covered, what's the point of having it if no one can see it? But there does seem to be this over cloth over it, which protected it, assumedly, but also would have made it. You don't leave the cover on your car all the time. You want the neighbors to see the car sometimes, right? You want to show off your car sometimes, and you got to not have it on all the time, right? So again, the cloth wasn't there all the time, but again, it's for protection. Assumedly, it's for the elements not to ruin this beautiful tabernacle, which again, in the wilderness, the elements could have been pretty punishing. So it makes sense that there was, by the way. I mean, I just want to tell you, this seems to indicate that there was, like, even if people weren't describing something that they had amongst them, they knew how people did these things, even if it was hundreds of years later. Make 50 loops on the edge of the outermost cloth of one set. And it says, we said that. Make 50 copper clasps and fit the clasp into the loops, and couple the tent together so that it becomes one whole. As for the overlapping excess of the cloths of the tent, the extra half cloth shall be the overlap of the back of the tabernacle. So again, there's also a back of the tabernacle on the covering. With the extra cubit at the other end of each length of the tent shall hang down to the bottom of the 2 sides of the tabernacle and cover it. And make for the tent a covering of tan ram skins and a covering of dolphin skins above. So again, this seems like maybe another tent, another covering that, were there 2 levels of covering, or again, is this kind of a description of the top of the tabernacle? Because we didn't really get a description of, we had the sides of the tabernacle. We didn't really get what goes on the top underneath that outer covering. So again, it's probably one outer covering and then one, set of coverings over the tabernacle. But there was a roof to the tabernacle. That's another important thing, is there were 2 essentially roofs. You shall make now we get to this interesting thing about the wood for the tabernacle, because we read about the tent material, the fabric, But what about the actual poles, if you will? And they're pretty detailed too. You shall make the planks of the tabernacle of acacia wood upright. The length of each plank shall be 10 cubits, and the width of each plank shall be 1.5 cubits. So pretty big piece of wood. I mean, that's 15 feet. That's a pretty good sized tree. Each plank shall have 2 tenons parallel to each other, and do the same with all the planks of the tabernacle. Does anyone know what a tenon is?
Mm-mm.
It's the piece of wood that sticks out when you make stuff out of wood. I'll show you a picture of it. It's the thing that sticks out that allows you to stick the piece into a hole on the other piece so that you can make the other piece is called, the translation that they usually use is a mortise. And the tenon is the tenon. Here, I'll show you. Yeah, I'm really asking for it, but you got to see it. Otherwise, you have to have a visual representation of it. So that's the tenon. The tenon is the wood piece that then sticks into the mortise. So everyone's seen that in woodworking. That's the way people can build together without there necessarily having to be things you can nail, right? So if you put in those pieces of wood, then you can join them together without nails. Pretty smart, right? That is the way the wood pieces were put together. Everyone still there? Did I freeze?
Okay.
Okay, good. So that is it's a little woodworking lesson here today. I feel like I'm doing I'm not Mr. Fix It. I'm not DIY guy, but I do find it obviously interesting how people would put this together and then be able to take it apart. And it all makes sense. And it just, again, I don't ask me if I've ever done this kind of woodworking before, because the answer is no. But it does sound like a great project to create tenons but you definitely have to have a really cool kind of. I don't have any of those tools. I got a little saw. That's it. It's not even electric, but I have a drill. But these are ways that people could make woodworking that would be solid, that would be strong. And people have been doing this for literally 10,000 years. People are, going back to the earliest wood that we found, woodworking, we found this type of style of work. Even before people had nails, they figured out how to get wood to work together. So of the planks of the tabernacle, make 20 planks on the south side, making 40 silver sockets under the 20 planks. 2 sockets under one plank for its 2 tenons, and 2 sockets under each plank for its 2 tenons. So again, that's the socket or the mortise. And for the other side wall of the tabernacle on the north side, 20 planks. With their 40 silver sockets, 2 sockets under one plank and 2 sockets under each following plank. And for the rear of the tabernacle to the west, make 6 planks. So again, you can see how many pieces of wood went along each side. Now again, Friedman uses calculations of his kind of ideas of how this was done to make it even better. He basically says that rather than having each, I wish I had I tried to find a good picture of what he describes, but he actually says rather than the pieces, rather than each piece being spaced apart, that it's possible that they kind of were overlapping, so that behind rather than just stretching, it's not like the drawing that I showed you, rather than stretching the tent pieces between two pieces of fabric, that there's actually pieces of plank behind the attached, like overlapping, so that it's not just stretched, which would make a lot more sense and also provide for more stability. So make 2 planks for the corner at the rear. So this is again 6 planks on each side, and then 2 planks on the back. These shall match at the bottom and terminate alike at the top inside of 1 ring, and thus it shall be for both of them. They shall form 2 corners. Thus there shall be 8 planks with their sockets of silver, 16 sockets, 2 sockets under the first plank and 2 sockets under each of the other planks. So again, the sockets themselves are actually covered in metal so that, again, the sockets stay solid. They don't break, and they're reinforced. You shall make bars of acacia wood, 5 planks for one side wall of the tabernacle, 5 bars for the planks on the other side wall of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the planks of the wall on the west, on the tabernacle at the rear to the west. The center bar halfway up the planks shall run from end to end. And again, that's for reinforcement. Overlay the planks with gold and make their rings of gold as holders for the bars, and overlay the bars with gold. So again, the wood is covered in gold. Now that makes it very heavy, obviously, but it also reinforces it and again makes it very beautiful, and shows that even the wood that was for foundational purposes, for essentially basic construction, even that was covered in gold. Then set up the tabernacle according to the manner of it as you were shown on the mountain. So God doesn't only tell him what to make it of, how to make it, the dimensions, but also, again, where and how it's supposed to be set up as I've shown you here at Mount Sinai. So everything I've told you, all the pieces, all the constructions, the way you put it together, the instructions, but also where you're supposed to do it, how you're supposed to set it up, what you're supposed to set up first, what you're supposed to, what goes where, all that. I've given you the directions. You shall make a curtain of blue, purple, and crimson yarns and fine twisted linen. It shall have a design of kruvim worked into it. We read that already. Hang it upon, but this is actually, again, the description here. Hang it upon 4 posts of acacia wood and overlaid with gold, and having hooks of gold and 4 sockets of silver. Hang the curtain under the clasps and carry the Ark of the Pact there behind the curtain, so that the curtain shall serve as a partition between the holy and the Holy of Holies. So again, the description that we have here is not only of a kruvim pattern on the tent of the Mishkan, but also on the curtain that separates the Ark from the Holy of Holies, the Kadosh Kadoshim. And so what is the Holy of Holies? And again, usually, by the way, we don't show as many pictures because we're doing this in person. But the cool thing about doing this is that we can share pictures, and again, to have some description of it. Now we do have, again, very clear descriptions of the temple's curtain, and it is described as kind of the curtain is what separates well, you just read it separates something that's holy from something that is super holy. And to kind of give you a good description of it, or good visual image of it, here I'll show you a couple of pictures. So I will. really pushing it today, but it's important. It's important to have the visuals here. So these are the bars. This is again, the planks and the bars that are going across here are making what you see not what you think you're going to see. You think you're going to see a tent on the other side of you, but you actually see what you would have seen inside the ark is gold walls. You would have seen the planks. You wouldn't have seen the tent. The tent you'd see from the outside, or actually if you see the outside when the goat's hair cover wasn't on, but this is what you'd see there, the crossbars. And again, Friedman thinks that the bars themselves were kind of overlapped so that they're not, that there's one behind the other, and then there's actually kind of like a way for it to kind of even be stronger. Not as long, by the way. It would be about half as long. It wouldn't have been as rectangular. It would have been quite a bit smaller, because the bars on the side would be the planks would be overlapped. So then there's this, which gives you an idea of what the curtain would have looked like inside. So you have the menorah, you have the showbread, the table for the showbread, and then you have we haven't gotten to the incense stand yet, but we have that too. And there's the curtain, and then there's the ark behind it, with the Holy of Holies being in that area. That's the area of the Holy of Holies. So that is one artistic depiction of, or some depictions of, what that space would have looked like. But it's not exactly what you would have thought, because you would have thought you would have seen the tent, but you really would have seen what you really would have seen is gold on the sides. You would have felt like you were in a gold box when you were in there. But again, it's really only the priests that are going inside this part anyways, the Mishkan. So place the cover of the Ark of the Pact in the Holy of Holies. Place the table outside the curtain, and the lampstand by the south wall of the tabernacle opposite the table, which is placed by the north wall, which I just showed you. You shall make a screen for the entrance of the tent of blue, purple, and crimson yarn, and fine twisted linen done in embroidery. Make 5 posts of acacia wood for the screen, and overlay them with gold, their hooks being of gold, and cast them 5 sockets of copper. So again, this is the opening has a special screen or a special curtain as well. This is called the masach. The curtain is called the parochet. So this is the word that's used for the curtain. It's also the word that we use for the curtain that oftentimes will cover an ark where we keep a Torah. So some Torahs have a opening, like we have, like a cabinet, and then other ones have an opening and then a curtain inside. That was the old style, what people used to do. Sometimes they only have a curtain. They don't have the outer opener door, if you will. They'll just have a curtain. I remember my childhood synagogue, Adad Ariel, just had a curtain. All of that curtain business that you see in modern day synagogues with art, with the Aron, is based on this parochet, this curtain here. And I've seen very few synagogues that have done something with the opening of their entrance of their synagogue that would keep this curtain there too, which is that the opening of the synagogue should also to some extent be something special, which is Well, for our ancestors was another embroidered cloth entrance, if you will. So there are skins that are used for the outsides. There's also inside, instead of skins, cloth. And again, it's embroidery. It's got embroidery in it. And so it's not just for strength, it's for beauty, it's for aesthetics. And so maybe again, the curtains and the screen, if you will, or the outer curtain, or entry curtain, whatever you want to call it, that those were quite beautiful and were done as artistic, they were artistic pieces. So this is the last part we're going to talk about today, which is the altar. So the altar is made of acacia wood, 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. So again, we're talking about, just under 10 feet in dimensions for the altar. The altar is to be square and 3 cubits high. So that's about 5, a little under 5 feet, 4.5 feet high. Make its horns on the 4 corners, the horns to be of one piece with it, and overlay it with copper. So you don't, according to this, you don't pop on corners, the horns on it, the corners, but you actually make it out of one piece, which is more expensive, obviously, and also quite detailed, something quite, quite ornate. Now, here's what's interesting about it. We found these altars throughout the Middle East, and they often have, we're talking about in the area around Israel, we found other altars, and they all have these horns. So it's this carnot, the horns are an integral piece of altar construction in the ancient Near East. Why are there horns? Well, the argument that's usually given is that's the style of construction. Just like there was kruvim, just like there was these angels in different in different places. Besides just the Mishkan, the Assyrians used these kruvim. Other cultures use kruvim. These altars seem to have almost needed to have horns in order to be Middle Eastern, accepted altar styles. We do read, when we read the descriptions of the sacrifices, that blood is put on the horns on the corners. And that this is somehow, again, part of the worship experience, that part of it is putting blood on the corners. Again, it's almost as if to say these are like extensions, places where, if you will, God and human beings come together, these karnot, these horns. But they're, again, almost consistently across the table, you'll see these horns on altars in the ancient Middle East, and we found them. And by the way, one of the ways to render an altar impure in the ancient world was to literally cut off the corners. So if you wanted to make an altar not usable anymore, if somebody was going to war against another nation and they wanted to destroy their religious site, you knocked off the corners, you vandalized the corners, and then that altar couldn't be used anymore. So it's kind of, again, practical, functional, again, maybe aesthetic purposes, but it's integral to the piece, which is, again, why it has to be part of one piece with it. It says, make the pails for removing its ashes, as well as the scrapers, basins, flesh hooks, and fire pans. Make all of its utensils of copper. You thought we were going to say gold. No, those things are made out of nachoshet, copper, which, by the way, makes a lot of sense for things that are going to have blood and heat and all these other things on them. Makes a lot more sense than using gold. Make for it a grating of mesh work in copper, and on the mesh make 4 copper rings at its 4 corners. Not sure if that's what the King James translation is there. Does anybody know? Does it say meshwork for that? Guys, I don't know if Schwartz is you're on. I don't know if it says meshwork for the altar.
I'm sorry, what is it?
Does it say? It says. Does it say meshwork in verse 4?
She's
Net. Upon the net.
on the net.
Pretty close. Pretty close. The same kind of idea is there, which is that on the altar, there would have been a way for stuff to burn and then the ashes to kind of be collected underneath. It actually allows for the offering to burn better. So, for most people, all this is so foreign and so unusual, it doesn't even make sense. But when you're burning things, actually, if you can keep it from, if you keep the fire, it's the same thing like a grill on a barbecue. I mean, it kind of makes sense that you don't just put it on you don't just put it on flame. You can't just put it on a stick or something. If you put it on mesh, and it'll burn. And again, copper is much better around heat, which is why people still use, and some people prefer, copper pots. Set the mesh below under the ledge of the altar so that it extends to the middle of the altar. And make poles for the altar and poles of acacia wood and overlay them with copper, which is again why we have these this altar, which has got let's look at this one. This one's pretty good. That the altar has poles on it for people to carry as well. So this is quite a important piece, right? Because this is where the offerings are going to be burnt. So here you can see the mesh, the net, flame coming through there underneath, and then the poles on the side, so that this would allow for practical usage of fire and offerings, and allow for this very important piece of the Mishkan to, again, be able to be used effectively and portable. And again, you'd think probably and again, there are other altars that were used later by the Jewish people, and actually maybe before, because we read about Jacob and some of the patriarchs, Isaac and Abraham, all building altars to God, that those altars were probably made out of stone. But bringing around an altar of stone, which we also read about, we actually read about it in Yitro, that you build altars of stone, doesn't make for very good portability. But we'll get to this. Hold it a second. I promise you. Make it hollow of boards, as you were shown on the mountain, so shall they be made. You shall make the enclosure of the tabernacle on the south side 100 cubits of hanging of fine twisted linen for the length of the enclosure on that side, with its 20 posts and its 20 sockets of copper, the hooks, the bands of the posts to be of silver. Again, 100 cubits of hanging for its length on the north side, with its 20 posts and its 20 sockets of copper, the hooks and the bands of the posts to be of silver. For the width of the enclosure on the west side, 50 cubits of hangings, with their posts and their 10 sockets. And for the width of the enclosure on the front of the east side, 50 cubits. 15 cubits of hangings on one flank, with 3 posts and their 3 sockets. 15 cubits of hangings on the other flank, with their 3 posts and their 3 sockets. And for the gate of the enclosure, a screen of 20 cubits of purple, blue, purple, and crimson yarns and fine twisted linens, done and embroidered with their 4 posts and their 4 sockets. All the posts around the enclosure shall be banded with silver, and their hooks shall be of silver, their sockets of twisted copper. And the length of the enclosure shall be 100 cubits, and the width 50 throughout, and the height 5 cubits, with hangings of fine twisted linen. Their sockets shall be of copper. And what we're talking about here, folks, is that outer enclosure, what it's called the amudeh, the outer enclosure for the tabernacle. So this is the enclosure that went around the whole thing. So this is the outer tent, if you will, just to give people, oh, this is a really old picture, but I kind of like to finish with this one. This is there's the picture of the Mishkan, of the outer curtain, the amudeh, and you can see it's about 7.5 feet tall. It's 5 cubits, or excuse me, 6.5. Yeah, 7.5 feet tall, about 1.5 feet. So for a cubit, so it's about, yep. So that kind of gives you an idea, and with the tents of the people all around it, which is real important too. There's the tent, and then there's the tent, the Mishkan, the actual tabernacle, the outer tent, and then this tent here too. So you can see there's stuff outside here too, right? And that, folks, is a whole nother altar. That's not the altar that we read about today. And it says right here again, sockets, all of the outer metal pieces are copper, which are much more effective, I would say, in a sense for the elements. People would have seen some copper along the outside. The socket shall be of copper, and all the utensils of the tabernacle for all its service, as well as its pegs, and all the pegs of the court shall be of copper. So again, you have gold and you have copper being used, and the gold is definitely used for the more kind of aesthetically important and the beautification, and the copper is definitely used for the more functional pieces.
So Rabbi, King James does not have the word copper, it uses the word brass.
You know, it's interesting because the word nachoshet, which is the word that I see most used today. What, you know, I would say the issue in Hebrew is that the word, there is no other word for alloy, you know, for copper in its bronze and brass forms. You know, I will tell you this. We don't know for sure.
Weren't you there?
Well, here's why we don't know for sure. Because it doesn't say, like when we read pure gold, right? It said zahav tahor, pure. That in some cases it said pure gold. Now I think when people would say, well, we would want to use pure copper because it's, you know, that much more valuable. But you could make the argument that brass or bronze would have been far more stable, right? And that if you're going to make something, you know, that you're going to make it, you know, strong, that you'd want to use the brass or bronze version, right? That was a big deal, right? Because we actually call it the Bronze Age, because when people figured out how to use bronze, when they moved out of the Iron Age into bronze, they figured out, we got a better metal that will whatever. You know what I'm saying? There was
More useful and what longer
yeah,
last.
I guess I think it's because they don't use the word pure that the King James went with the idea that it wasn't necessarily pure copper. Now, copper was definitely and still is obviously right. It's much more inexpensive. It's still expensive, by the way, nowadays, right? You don't want to take it for granted, but nothing compared to gold. And they did mine copper in Israel. They didn't really mine gold in Israel. Gold came from Africa. Even in the Bible, it comes from Africa. In a few places that are described as there's gold in our hills, but it's not everywhere. Copper is still can be mined in Israel, especially down by Eilat. But I will tell you that I think it's based on this idea of like what would be more practical, and if they didn't use the word, if they didn't use it. So maybe the King James version is maybe the King James version is actually the better way to go on this. I just want to see what let me just see what the new international version used for actually I should look at what Friedman used. Friedman's pretty solid. I would go with his translations of okay. All right. Give me 2 seconds. He didn't translate that in this one. Don't go anywhere. Wait. I don't have to go anywhere. I had it right here. Let me just read you how Friedman translated it. I love these kind of questions, so I definitely want to give you an answer on what biblical scholars would have thought that the Mishkan. Oh, you know what? You know what I'm going to do? It's not what I wanted to do because I tried to find this picture online and I couldn't. But you know what? I'll show you out of his book. So let me just tell you how he translated it. And he has a lot of. This is his commentary, by the way. He wrote a commentary to the Torah. Friedman did. It's his translation, New English translation, and his commentaries on it. So he translates it as. And by the way, I want to say before I forget, the next portion, Tetzaveh, we sometimes read this with Terumah. Sometimes it's a doubled up portion. So there's a lot of stuff. But next week, we're going to read Tetzaveh, which continues with construction of, with some of the really cool things inside the tabernacle, but also some of the stuff about the altar, the outside altar. Hold it 1 second. So here's what he says. He says, I was right in my hunch. What do you think he says? What do you think he says? Brass? Do you think he says copper, brass, or bronze? What do you think he says?
Bronze.
He says
Copper.
bronze.
Copper.
Right though, where you got it, bronze. He translated it as bronze because, again, I think he went with the idea that bronze would have made a much. He didn't write why he said bronze, but I know that's what he would have done. He would have said bronze. So I do want to show you one thing though, because it is in here, and I'm gonna do my best to show it. So let me see if I get this up here on the screen, because I am going to now put this up here. So this is his, again, I tried to find this picture, but I couldn't find it. So here's his inner, there it is. I got it. Here's his inner, how he has the planks. So he has the planks, as you can see, overlapping. So if you can see that, right? He has the planks overlapping so that they're not just end to end, but they're overlapping, which would have made it not as long. Right?
But that would make it really tough to put together, after you're traveling for, 5-6 days or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it though, it makes for a dimension that is not as, if it's that long, it actually makes it a little less stable. It makes it much easier to tip over because there's not as much enforcement.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Now, the key reason why he says this, by the way, folks, too, is that if you look at that, the way he draws it out, if you take that and you pop it inside the Beit HaMikdash, it fits. If you don't, the tabernacle is a little too long. Now, I'd make the argument that the tabernacle didn't have to fit into the to the final temple that we built, that Solomon built. He likes the idea that it actually fits in perfectly. I would say, hey, look, it doesn't have to be the exact dimensions. It captures the feel of it. But he likes it that it was actually, if you looked at it, it actually recreated that to the
But
exact.
if we're talking stability of the Mishkan, I mean, think about the winds that the desert gets, and and it's just fabric and wood,
Yeah. So his argument, by the way, too, and the way he kind of constructs it, is that it allows for more stability behind each plank, so that the planks wouldn't wobble. Like if you pushed into the plank, it would collapse easy. But if there's another plank behind it and it overlaps, then the planks are much more stable. So he'd make the argument that, and he before he put this out there, he talked to architects about why that would make more sense. And so he found some good architectural evidence for why that would make sense. But look, it's something it's been a big part of his teachings for a long time, which is why this section of the commentary, of his commentary in Exodus, I mean, there are a lot of people who would not have gone into that detail in their commentary. They would not have had, and again, based on the pages that he devoted to this chapter, these chapters of Exodus, in order to put this diagram in here, that's 2/3 of a page, and there's a lot of commentators in the modern era who wouldn't have done that. So he obviously thought this is pretty important. And by the way, I'm gonna read you this commentary to tell you why he wrote so much about this. This is what he said, and we'll kind of finish with this. No one has ever figured out how the tabernacle is put together. The components are given here, but the text does not say how they are put together. 20 frames are used on each side wall, etc. But there, here's what he says. Well, he goes through all the reasons why the dimensions he thinks lead to this, which is all the problems and questions point to a different way that the tabernacle is put together. I propose that the reason that the frames are a cubit and a half cubit is because they overlap each other by the extra half of cubit. This is a more stable and better for ventilation. And if they stood side by side, than if they stood side by side. The 20 frame length by 6 frame width means a structure that is 20 cubits by 6 cubits on the inside. If the frames are a half cubit wide, then it is 20 by 8 on the outside. Now, if we take the two large fabrics that are 20 by 28 cubits and we connect them with clasps and then we fold them along the clasps, it fits the structure. The gold clasps are now visible and they surround the entrance to the tabernacle. The 20 cubit width of the fabric matches the 20 cubit length of the tabernacle. And the 28 cubit length of the fabric goes up on one side of the tabernacle, 10 cubits high, across the ceiling, 8 cubits, and down the other side, 10 cubits. And so then he will say later on this. What difference do these cubits make? Why does it matter whether the tabernacle is 8 by 20 cubits or 10 by 30? Because 8 by 20 cubits and 10 cubits high is the size of the space under the wings of the cherubim inside the Holy of Holies in the temple in Jerusalem. Either the tabernacle really stood in that space, or the space represented it symbolically, while the tabernacle itself was stored away somewhere inside the building. So the Bible says that the tabernacle was inside the building, but was it actually being stored away? Was it really there? He feels that if the dimensions of the ark of the tabernacle are as he says, as he proposes, then it could have actually been inside there, or again, could have held the place of what it is. So this is a big part of his theories. Otherwise, he kind of says that it never really happened, and the not that it never really happened, but that all these dimensions are all really not known for sure anyways, which leads to your initial point, which is why I brought it up, which is that they actually may really matter. These dimensions and the way that they actually were put together were really important to people hundreds of years later, because they either believed that they still had the tabernacle, or they wanted to represent the tabernacle, and they wanted to have those exact dimensions in their temple. So
is Friedman still teaching?
I think he may have just retired. He moved to Georgia about 10, 15 years ago. I don't know, probably almost 20 years ago. He moved to Georgia to be the professor there. He left UCSD to be a professor at Georgia, and to basically head the Judaic Studies department there. But he's either just retired or is retiring, but he still has some recordings. If you look online, you can see some of the recordings that of some of his lectures and some of the things that he's taught. But he's definitely a guy that I would love to have. If I did a Bible show, if we produced a Bible show for JLTV, he'd be my go-to person, because he's got.
You ever talk to him anymore?
I think we had one or two conversations. He's I don't think he's ever really forgiven me for not becoming a professor, but he is we have talked, and I haven't proposed to do this yet, but I really would like for him to do. He's been on many Bible documentaries. They've interviewed him, but he really is one of the great teachers of how we can understand the Bible. I listened to a podcast with one of his colleagues, a little younger colleague named Ron Hendel, who's the professor of Bible up at UC Berkeley. And Ron's a really great teacher too, also happens to be Jewish. And Ron is one of the leading Bible teachers too, but he approaches it from a slightly different way. And I've really always, and I studied with Ron actually. He was a visiting professor at Oxford the year I was there. And Friedman had been the one who recommended me to Oxford, because he had been there, I think, 2 years before I was there. So Ron was the person he recommended, and who happened to overlap while I was there. So I got to take classes with Ron as well. But I just heard a podcast with Ron Hendel today about the Bible, about who wrote the Bible and why it's important. It was on a podcast called Judaism Unbound. So there's great Bible teachers out there now, even more so with people doing stuff online. There's more and more of this stuff is available, and I definitely.
When we lived in Sedona, Rabbi, I had a friend, Avram Cohen, that did that. Was a professor up in near the place up near Stephen S. Weiss up there.
At UJ, University of Judaism?
Yeah. He did that. He lives in Sedona now. He's one of the nicest guys, and he also knew a lot about the time, like around when the Second Temple got destroyed. Very intelligent man.
That's again one of those periods where I think people who love history really want to kind of.
Yeah, we had a lot of this. That's why I remember bringing it up. That's why he gave me all those books that I read. We just had a lot of discussions. He was very interesting.
Yep. Well, this is definitely an interesting topic. It's one that, again, people oftentimes they glaze over when they start talking about the dimensions. But, what's so amazing about it is the fact that they kept these precise dimensions, that they were concerned with them, and that they wanted to create this holy space where God and humans would come together. And
wouldn't it be fun one year to actually build it?
It would be very fun.
I think it'd be fun.
But it would be that would be quite an
You
undertaking.
can
It
do
would
it
be
in the
cool.
outside area, where we used to put the,
Yeah, it could be really cool. You're right. I listen. It would be an amazing DIY project. You could get a lot of guys who like to build that would get on it, but it'd be very cool. But we're gonna read more next week. We're gonna read Tetzaveh. We're gonna read the creation of some of these really cool priestly things, and again, to try to imagine what these things look like.
Abraham's still up in the mountain, right?
We mean Moses.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, Moses is still up in the mountain. Exactly.
It's late, so I'm
No,
falling
it's
asleep.
Moses. You're right. Moses is still up on the mountain.
What
All right,
about Aaron?
folks. Where's Aaron? That's a good question. Aaron's down below, and he's about to cause some trouble.
Oh yeah.
While Moses is getting that, and that's not next week's portion. It's the portion the week after in Ki Tisa. We're going to read the golden calf. So the golden calf story is right around the corner, folks. Not next week, but the week after is the golden calf. But next week we have Wednesday. We'll see you then. And again, we're going to send out another reminder. Next Thursday night is Purim. So it's not going to be the same, but it's going to be fun. I promise. All right, everybody.
Thank you.
Take
All
care.
right.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Stay healthy and please get the lights on in Houston, Texas,
Amen.
Dallas, in wherever, in all
Yeah.
across Texas, San Antonio, whoever's missing stuff. I don't think San Antonio, but Dallas and Houston. All right, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Rabbi.
See you soon.
Good night.
See ya.
Thank you.